Hey, hey, Blue Table fans! Today we're going to talk about a subject near and dear to my heart, and that is fantasy role-playing, Dungeons and Dragons. And I recently picked up a used copy of the old Fiend Folio. This came out, I do believe it is, in 1979. And I just bought it for the sake of nostalgia and to kind of look at it again. It looks like 1981. And in fact, I remember being 13 years old and picking this up and going to the park and reading it. And it has a foreword, which I never read before. Apparently, this is a British contribution to Dungeons and Dragons. And of course, D&D was really new at the time. And by the way, you can't see them, but I have a lot of other books here that we're going to be talking about. My battery says 37 minutes, but it's been known to cut out, so I may have to string this together. And we're really going to look at this. So, obviously, when D&D came out, you had the Monster Manual, and I don't have a copy of that, otherwise I would show it to you. And then, of course, when the Fiend Folio came out, that was really a big deal to have this much content come out in a hardback book. At the time, of course, there was the Monster Manual, the Player's Handbook, and the DM's Guide. And those were sort of your big purchases that you would make to play Dungeons and Dragons. But looking through this, a lot of these monsters have really gotten into the modern versions of the game. In fact, Paizo Publishing, who makes Pathfinder, which, as I've said before, is the real Dungeons and Dragons, they have the Bestiary. This came out, I do believe it is, in 2008. Pathfinder is 10 years old now. And the great thing about Pathfinder is they're not releasing new editions of the game just to get you to buy new books every 2, 3, or 4 years. They've got the core rule book. I don't think I have one handy, but they have a core rule book, which basically that's it. That's, you buy that and you're set. I mean, of course, for the basic rules. So anyway, I was always fascinated by this creature here. That formation really always appealed to me. Some of these, for some weird reason, were very thought-provoking, but like the Alex, which is a creature that comes and punishes you for not adhering to your alignment. And a lot of these I'd like to include in my game, both my Emerald Spire game, which I run tabletop every Friday, and also the Ultimate D&D, which I'm working up now. And a lot of this artwork is pretty disturbing. In fact, let me just focus in on this one picture. I mean, some of that is, it's really bloody stuff. And when this came out, this was all new. I mean, a lot of creatures from Dungeons and Dragons, like the Beholder, have gotten into like common consciousness, and but at this time, when these came out, this was a lot of really original thought here, and some of the artwork in this is really good. I mean, check this out. Like, this is so thought-provoking here. Just this little scene, this masked assistant, and then this weird skeletal creature, crypt thing. So it's interesting because some of these made it into sort of the role-playing game consciousness, and some of them didn't make it, And here you have Loth, which was really an original idea, very thought-provoking. That's a creation of Gary Gygax. In fact, Loth comes from Queen of the Demon Web Pits and, of course, the Drow series. And to bring your character to level 10 through 14 was really a big deal at the time. And so, the Drow, which now are just played out, they were really very original at the time, very, very thought-provoking. I think I've used that term several times now. So the Loth, and look at how thick the text is on here. And this is all Gary Gygax. He typed all this up. I mean, just Just so much original thought. Absolutely fantastic. So anyway, so Loth had already been out in this module, and then they put a lot of these monsters into the Fiend Folio to sort of canonize them. Disenchanter still lives on in the modern bestiaries. In fact, let me just show you. Let me just lift this. Hold on a second. My camera's getting caught on a lever here. Oh, there you go. That's very nice. All right, so there's Paizo's come out with 6 bestiaries, which we're going to take a look as long as I have battery. Oh no, I'm coming down to 32 minutes. Okay, I might be good. And these bestiaries are just great quality. We're actually going to be looking at those in a minute. So the Disenchanter has found its way into the genre pretty well. You have these Oriental dragons now. Princes of Elemental Evil, which actually did not get sort of revamped in any version of the game that I've seen. The Drow Elves. And yes, we are going to go page by page for this entire book. Isn't that exciting? Great. The Flail Snail. I mean, a lot of the monsters in this are like low-level creatures and like just regular things you might find in an ecology. Even though they're bizarre, they're not like over-the-top, demon lords and stuff like that, which is really, I think, the hallmark of the Fiend Folio, is it had very weird, just bizarre, like the Flumph, like what's this guy doing? And whoa, there we go. So let's see here. And I'm surprised the Fiend Folio and these other books haven't gone up in value. You do see some old DM guides if they're in really good conditions. Those can break $100. So I guess there's some collectability there. I always like this creature, the Garbug, which is a lobster with like insect wings, a giant lobster. Gibberlings. Yeah. Oh, Githyanki. Now this is very interesting. This is a monster that's really captured the consciousness of the role-playing community, and because these guys were really cool, and like these psionic former slaves that were from a different dimension, and the astral plane is where their thing was. And but what's interesting is the Wizards of the Coast owns certain monsters that are not under their open game license. So, for example, in Pathfinder, you won't see any Beholders or Mind Flayers because Wizards of the Coast holds an exclusive copyright on those. And the Githyanki is on that list. And it's a very limited list. It's only 11 creatures. And the list, once I looked it up, it was very surprising. Like some of them, like the Displacer Beast, the Carrion Crawler, those were all creatures that were iconic, but some of them were just random weird stuff. So Githyanki, Githzerai, which is their nemesis there. Just look at this art. I mean, and especially, I think this art still holds water today. I mean, it's very evocative, and it really set the tone for the game. And the Fiend Folio definitely had a feel. I mean, just great stuff. The Grell. There's a must-have book for any dungeon master. It's called Lords of Madness, and it talks about the psionic creatures or the bizarro creatures like Beholders, Mind Flayers, the Grell, a couple others I can't remember, Aboleths. And Grimlocks definitely made it into Pathfinder. You see a lot of them. Let's see here. Oh, Iron Cobra. That's something you see in current modules nowadays too, that people really sort of took a liking to that monster. And Kenku, this was always one of my favorites, these hawk-headed creatures. I always thought they were parrots, but apparently they have heads of hawks. I don't know how I missed that. So the Kuatoa, those come from the Vault of the Drow series, D1, D2, D3. Let's see here. Got some Frazetta-like art going on here. Some of these creatures really freaked out my 13-year-old mind, and I actually kind of was a bit disturbed by them. One of them is the mean lock, and so I remember being as a kid kind of that for some reason that really bothered me, and because not just the picture, but how they're described, that these creatures sort of skulk along the outskirts of the camp, and they eventually cause their target to become insane, and they drag them off underneath the ground and do horrible things to them that turn them into another mean lock. So Mephits debuted in the Fiend Folio, and they have definitely become a thing in the role-playing genre. The Mezzademon, that again was turned into canon in this publication from the earlier modules. They sort of rounded up a lot of that Vault of the Drow stuff and put it in here. Same Nycademon, same thing. Penangling, this was a creature that kind of freaked me out as a kid too. And it's interesting because, you know, it's like you've learned, the words capture your imagination, and so the words can really bring you to a different place. And some of this art is really kind of disturbing, you know. Like, what the heck's going? What's she doing to this guy? You know. So Penangling is just a female head, so like a vampiric undead creature. But when she flies off at night, she pulls all her guts out of her body, and they kind of trail around after her, which is really gross if you think about it. Retriever has been around forever and ever, and I want to take some of these more obscure monsters and include them into my ultimate D&D stuff. Sort of revive them. And of course, I'm just playing a private game that I don't really have as much of copyright issues, you know. So, and then there's the Slod, which are these sort of demonic frog things. And this is one of the few, one of the 11 creatures that Wizards of the Coast owns the intellectual property and did not make them available under the open game license. And I have no idea why. I don't know why some things were okay and some things weren't. What I imagine is it was that the majority of the monsters really just found, like, they weren't unique property. They were just pulled out of mythology or some other sources, so you really couldn't copyright them because they weren't original enough. That'd be my prediction. I'd love to hear from somebody who, thought something else. Susurrus, Stun Jelly, Svirfneblin have become sort of a staple creature. Let's see here. Yeah, just so much. Guys, so much bizarre stuff. Absolutely. Just these weirdo creatures. Vodyanoi, which is an aquatic Umberhulk. Umberhulk is one of those 11 creatures that didn't make it. And then, all right, we're over to Zill. These guys have been wonderfully reinvented in the Pathfinder world. And just really cool. And it's interesting because when I read these entries, it's like each creature has sort of its own made-up rules to it, where they had to just make up systems to portray what that creature did. And now, of course, in Pathfinder, they've codified everything so that it all makes sense, and you can just draw from like these universal special rules. A lot like what Warhammer ended up doing. So fast forward, fast forward 26 years, and now you have Pathfinder Bestiary. And it makes me wonder what it is I'm going to be looking at 25 years from now. Oh my gosh, yeah. All right, so anyway, so let's take a look at this Pathfinder product, or Paizo product. This is good stuff. And it says just Bestiary. It bothers my OCD that it doesn't say Bestiary 1. But of course, when they produced it, I don't think Paizo knew at the beginning whether they were even going to be around the next year. So, here's the classic. It's an Aboleth. What they've done is they've redone the appearance of these creatures. They've sort of made it their own, which I think is really nice. And I'm not going to go through this whole book, by the way. So what's interesting is even though the Bestiary is the counterpart for the Monster Manual, It's not all the Monster Manual creatures in here. It's, you know, you've got some Fiend Folio stuff, you've got some original stuff. They basically, I think they just cherry picked the best things and put it in here. And just to go back to Fiend Folio, you got Monster Manual, then you had the Fiend Folio, and then you had the Monster Manual 2. And those were sort of the major canon of the early D&D monster books. And let's see, dire bears and bats and stuff. Behir. So this is what's so interesting to me, is how all of this is sort of shaken down. So let's transport your minds back to 1981 again. And out comes Lost Caverns of Sarkanth, which is 13-year-old Sean was completely mind blown by this adventure. It's very thick. It's probably got 126 pages in it. It really is one of the best modules ever. I mean, and so when you buy this, you would get the basic book. This is missing the cover sheet, by the way. Get the basic book, which had all the encounter areas. I mean, and the art was just really, really fantastic. The Peck, we're going to be talking about those guys, I'm pretty sure. And just really a lot of cool, mind-expanding things going on. Absolutely great. And incidentally, okay, spoiler alert, I'm about to show you the map for this. Like it matters, this is like a 30-year-old thing. Who cares? Who's going to play this? So what I want to do is sort of create an homage or an inspired by Ultimate D&D adventure. So back to Ultimate D&D, or Ultimate Fantasy Role-Playing, if you will. It's like a Valhalla thing, so people would come out, I would run them through this adventure in a high-end retreat, and actually create a giant three-dimensional image. And I might actually create three-dimensional versions of this very adventure, maybe even call it that. I have no idea. I'd like to kind of make my own thing, though. But anyway, I've done the measurements here, and this is what you would need for this map. You would need a 6x4 table repeated 3 times. That would actually be a little bit bigger than this, because each of these squares is 10 feet, which would correspond to 2 inches. So you'd need about 100 inches from top to bottom, which could be about 8 feet. So 12 feet with the 6x4, 6x4, 6x4 would actually be a little too big for this, but I'm trying to figure out how to make this all work. I probably just expand this or contract it based on what I really had, but I want to create a 3-dimensional version of this. And in fact, again, let me just show you really quick some of the stuff I've actually created so far. This is a 1.5 by 2 foot cavern piece that I made that has, it's an unfinished water feature there. I don't know how much if I can get in the camera. Well, anyway, there's your teaser. But I'd have to create a lot of those to really fully reproduce this map. So back to the bet here. So let's look at the authors for this. Well, actually, I don't think it says. Hold on, just see if I can. Oh yeah, by Gary Gygax. And I think he may have been working with a small team by then. So you get this other thing, which is all the monsters. It's like new monsters. And this was like a miniature new like monster manual. And lo and behold, look at this guy, the Behir. And they created, look at his art. I mean, how imaginative is that? That's so great. That guy. It didn't go as well for him as he thought it would. But just so many of these monsters, which were original, sort of obscure, now have moved into the mainstream of a very well-known role-playing system. So Grazit, Kachchi, however you say that. The Darrow. Now, I always loved the Darrow. And in fact, they make a showing in one of my favorite modules, When a Star Falls. And the Darrow have really been reinvented by Paizo Publishing into something completely different. And it's one of the few things where I really wish they had sort of kept them the same. But anyway, yeah. And so, yeah, all these great new monsters. So, and here's the Peck again. In fact, the thing I'm running now by Paizo, Modern Adventure, has one of these guys in it. And so there you go. And then new magic items and stuff like that. Just such cool stuff. And it's very, like if somebody rediscovered this, you know, and they were reading this module from 1981 for the first time, it's still got all its magic. Look at the back cover, isn't that cool? So there's like, the adventurers are like taking a break and they're looking around, they're like, what killed this guy? Oh, and here it comes. Oh, this slime is just it's gonna slime him and get him. You know, that he had to hide in this crevice so he wouldn't be gooed up, you know. Just really neat stuff. So much fun. So anyway, so this is the Bestiary by Paizo. It's kind of the new monster manual, and but just look at the difference. I mean, it's all color. Each creature has a full page spread to it, and there's just so many just neat things that have been reinvented or reimagined and presented in a new and wonderful way. I think it's great what Paizo has done, and they really it's unprecedented. I mean, they basically just co-opted this amazing intellectual property, and not just that, but also, I mean, this is giants, you know, giants of ice, giants of fire. These are really archetypical things that have existed in human consciousness for hundreds of years, thousands of years, that are being reborn into the imaginations of people today. So, and just a quick note, the Gibbering Mouther, one of my favorite monsters, made its first appearance in one of my favorite modules. It was C1, Hidden Shrine of Tomoken. This was a competition adventure at Gen Con. And again, you look at the copyright, it says 1980, 1981. And this is one of the greatest adventures. I've run it like 5 times, and I absolutely love it. And in here, there's new monster, Gibbering Mouther. So this stuff is really old. If you're a new to Pathfinder and you're looking at this stuff, a lot of these things that may just seem, oh well, Rand, they probably just made this up. Well, nope. It comes from a really long time ago, and it's something that's been sort of refined into its present form. So amazing. And, you know, I've always loved these modules. I've always picked the best ones, run them again and again. But I have to tell you, now that I own the entire set of Paizo adventure paths, which is, by the way, 120 books, I have to say, those guys have done an amazing job. And they've added to the Gestalt. I think I'm using that word right. They've added to their imagination to what's gone before. So, all right, last thing, because by the way, this video is going to be really an amazing resource for anyone that's getting into this. So the Bestiaries, they each have different themes. And I have to say, and you'll notice how worn these are. Look at how banged up that is. I have 2 of each of these now, by the way. I have like a good version. When my kids were young, they were playing with them, and they've kind of ripped up some of the pages. So, yeah, Bestiary 1 and 2 is a must. I would even say Bestiary 1, 2, and 3. Basically, they just cover sort of all the basic creatures, and they add some really cool stuff. And most of the adventure paths draw from the first 3 books and add things here, that like the Jyoti, which again, they're very, very imaginative. So Bestiary 3, again, it's just basic creatures, and very, very complete. If you pick up 1, 2, and 3, you're going to be set for creatures for life, basically. And then you get to Bestiary 4. Bestiary 4, out of the 6, this is my absolute favorite one, because it has all the weirdos in it. And you've got really a lot of Call of Cthulhu stuff. And Call of Cthulhu obviously must be in public domain now. Star Spawn of Cthulhu must be in public domain. And you start seeing really these sort of higher power creatures. And because the original Pathfinder went from level 1 to 20, and then as you go on through these bestiaries and through the adventure paths and all the publications, they started doing levels 21 through 30. And so Bestiary 4 is really my favorite because it has a lot of what I think are the most imaginative creatures. And again, you see like Flying Polyp. This is a creature from one of the earlier books, like from the 80s. And they introduced the clockwork creatures. Oh no, I think that's 3. Yeah, Clockwork Dragon is one of my favorite creatures. You're actually going to see I've painted up a Reaper Clockwork Dragon, and that turned out really well. So Bestiary 5 and 6, I really haven't read them as much, but Bestiary 6, my comment on this is you start seeing some really, really, really stupidly powerful things. Like Bestiary 6 is the like great old one, challenge rating 28, meaning your players should be 28th level before they fight this guy. Why are they making stats for these? For fun? Like the old deities and demigods? Well, guess what? No, I think they're actually going to be making modules or making resources for it, and you see things getting up into the challenge rating 21 through 30. Well, guys, thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope that you have enjoyed.